everybody, and welcome back to the Secure After Dark podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Infosec Pat. Pat, thank you here for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you guys having me on, and looking forward to this episode.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I have seen quite a bit of your content. I actually would search some random thing either to send to somebody at Alias or somebody asking me a question, or sometimes just certain things that I've been kind of wondering myself. And I kept finding your videos just in there. Like I was never in originally I did subscribe, but initially I was not, of like following your content. I just kept seeing it. And I was like, okay, this guy makes lots. And I went to your video and I was like, holy crap, this guy makes a lot of videos here. So yeah, I was just kind of wanted to ask you about that. Kind of what's your background and all of that. So I guess just who is InfoSec Pat and how'd you get started?
Yeah, so talking about the content creation part, how I got started was about almost 5 years now. And I was studying for the PCNSE, which is Palo Alto's certification, with a group of friends just before the pandemic hit. And when we were studying for this, we all had a individual task. We'll take a part of the syllabus. We'll say, okay, Tanner, you're, going to be doing IPsec VPN, right? And then I'm going to be doing static routing. And then someone else is doing site-to-site VPN, whatever the case is. And when I was doing it, my first video and my first task was to show the gang, the people that I was doing this with, to install Panorama in VMware Workstation. Because, who wants to go out there and get a physical firewall when you can virtualize it with, we ended up using EVE-NG more so, but we wanted to get a connector to our VMware Workstation so that connects to our vCenter, and that's, goes on from there. And one of my friends was like, why don't you just throw this, instead of four of us, why don't you just throw it on YouTube? And literally, I never used YouTube before that day. So I never watched a YouTube video, just like probably, really? Yeah, I never used YouTube, and I never really had this will go into something probably later, a social media or an online presence at all. So when my friend Kenny was like, hey man, like you should just throw this on YouTube, figure it out. And if you see, the first video I ever posted was how to install Palo Alto in VMware. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like press record and just started, installing it and seeing how it came out, and just use that OBS output and threw it up there. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to do any of that. I still don't really know how. I got a little better. But yeah, and that's how I got into the whole content creation. And when I started seeing like folks, and when I actually started looking up topics to do, like how to hack Wi-Fi, like all the fun stuff, right? Name it, like how to hack your neighbor's Wi-Fi. So clickbaity, right? And literally I was on there for like a week, and I think I had 6 subscribers, which was like my brother, my dad, my uncle, and like the first people I sent my YouTube to. I got a strike. So I was like, what the hell? What is a strike? And then, so I would, research on how to hack Wi-Fi. And I'm like, okay, I can see hacker exploit. I can see other people putting up that same kind of content. Why is theirs? Because they had 500,000 subscribers and I had 4, but the content is still the same. So that really put a, salty thing in my mouth. Like, what the hell's going on here, And so I lost a little faith after a week. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to put up hacking content. I can put up content that, I really enjoy back then. Like I was doing more network security versus pen testing and all that stuff. So I was doing like Cisco firewalls, ASAs, and stuff like that. And then, it grew to what it is today. And
so you have more of a networking background then as well. That's kind of where I come from as well. As a network engineer for a long time, got some CCNPs. I was in the middle of doing my CCIE whenever COVID happened, and that was when I made the official full-time switch. Doing part-time security for a long time before that, but that was whenever I just full-blown started going to offensive security full-time. And done the written, and then my lab got postponed because of COVID, and I was like, I'm out, screw this. I've been studying for 2 years, I'm done. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So before the content stuff, how did you kind of get into IT in general? It sounds like.
Oh yeah, that's a lovely story. So IT in general. So I grew up. Right now, I'm trying to simmer down my accent, but I'm
Yeah, don't worry
from
about it.
I'm from New York originally, so I come from not a traditional nerd background, right? I grew up playing, manhunt, in the streets, and like playing
Mhm.
hockey, playing stickball, playing, going to the park. I didn't have a computer until I graduated high school. So after high school, when I was starting college, I was skating back then. I was skateboarding. So I would film and then I would like use like iMovie or like little editing stuff, with a couple of friends to edit our sponsor videos. And in like a technical school when I was 19, I uh I started studying multimedia design because I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to fucking move out to California and just do that.
Yeah.
And a friend of my uncle's friend was like, Pat, you should, try to work in IT. There's a lot of money. Because at that point, I was going to school and I was working as an electrician with my uncle. And my uncle's friend was like, you don't want to break your back, doing that with Uncle Joe. Just try to get into, we can make you a bench tech here. And, you can get like your A plus, these all these certifications and I didn't know what that was. And that's how I got into the world of IT. I was sitting on a bench, reformatting computers, installing hard drives. And so I did things a little backwards. I did my MCSE first. So I did my Microsoft Certified System Engineer for 2003 server. And then I went to because when I was studying for A plus, that was really hard for me because I didn't know what, all these components were. And I just started in computers and IT. And with the software, like or Active Directory, that was more intriguing for me, instead of like the electronical engineering aspect, like the component aspect. And I did the MCSE, and then I went back, then A plus, Network plus, Security plus, Server plus, Linux plus, those
Okay.
pluses, and then yeah, that's how I started. And that's.
You went super broad with it. You went right off the bat, just going real wide, everything you could get a hold of, kind of. It sounds like.
Yep, yes sir.
Yeah. Was that through like a vocational school, or I guess what around what year was that? Because that's also a there's a lot more resources now than there was in 2005.
Yep, exactly. That was in 2004. That was in 2004. So that shows my age. But yeah,
Say,
yep.
yeah.
So that was in 2004. And yep, that was when, when I was studying for the MCSC, they had virtual PC as the hypervisor, which was rubbish, right?
Oh, yeah, I
Um,
remember it was awful.
yeah, yeah. So, and then that's when like you had, you know, I would take computers from work, go home, reinstall, 2003 server, blah blah blah, you know, crack it, all that good stuff. Because who could afford, keys back
Yep.
then? At least I couldn't at 19
Yep.
years old. Um, so and then I had like my three Windows. I think it was Windows XP and then Windows Vista Ultimate with the Ultimate one, and joining those to my 2003 box. And that's how I was studying for the 2003 server. And then I upgraded to the MCIGP Enterprise Admin.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that's what was the I'm drawing a blank. Microsoft had a thing where you could just download all their stuff if you were like a developer. I think once you got an MCSC, you got access to it. What was that?
Yeah, MSDN. Oh,
Yeah.
M,
Yeah, I think that's right. MSDN, something like that.
yeah,
Trying
MSDN.
to
I
remember.
think. Yeah, Microsoft
Yeah.
Development. Yeah, Network or something like that, MSDN. Yeah, I think
And they got
that's.
rid of it, unfortunately, but probably because I just remember I knew a guy that had it. I think he was my cousin. Ended up giving me all the downloads I wanted. That was the way. Yeah, I used Linux because I was broke, not because I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, same for sure. Okay, so then just kind of from there led into an IT career that you've kind of taken off into more of a security turn, obviously. Um,
Yep.
Naturally, just more interesting, or is there a particular thing that pushed you to that?
No, yeah, it was a story that pushed me that. So if that story didn't happen, we'll get to that in a second. I wouldn't be here talking to you.
Yeah,
because I
let's hear it.
really enjoyed like networking, right? Routing, switching, VPNs, BGP, EIGRP, like all that stuff intrigued me, and I went I have 3 CCNPs. I went to this, the CCIE as well, like you was saying, but like I
Nice.
enjoyed that. And then getting to like NSX, which is the, routing, switching firewalls in the VMware world. So I did my VCP VCAP as well. And when it happened I was 25, 26. I was selling sneakers on eBay. So that's when eBay was connected to PayPal. So PayPal was the money, right? Now it just connects right to your bank. So my PayPal got hacked. And when my PayPal got hacked, I was like, that's a bummer. I had like $900 in there. And yeah, and that's what happened. And then I was like, how the hell did that happen? My dumbass, I just, clicked on a link and then put my creds just like how we do it as a social engineering now, right? So I was a victim there. And that's what really sparked the interest of like, oh man, this is real. This can actually happen. I got my money back, but I was like, then I went
Nice.
into this path of like, how can I do that legally, right? And back then, a lot of things were more gray, right? Pen testing and all that stuff wasn't as hot as it is today, right? So I would just create my own. I'm not I'm not condoning any illegal activity, but you can create your own accounts and attack your own thing because you have consent to do it to yourself. And that's when I was learning about like portal logins and spraying and doing all these things like that I was doing to myself. And, that's before MFA and all that good stuff. And then I learned how to do stuff with tokens and looking into back then was Backtrack R3 and doing all that fun stuff. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just Googling and watching, stuff on the interwebs and just pretty much copy and pasting literally how I learned. And yeah, that's how I got into it.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I always like to hear people who, come up through some kind of I feel like you can tell a lot of the people. There seems to be two paths. There's the people who saw some sort of an injustice and then they decided to no, I don't like that. And then I think there's the people who are just yeah, I like to break things. I'm unfortunately the latter. I wish I could say I had a great story. I just like taking things apart and breaking them. I don't know. Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit about something you touched on. You said you didn't have any kind of online presence. You kind of came up from this. Also, you said something about A plus that I think is really good. A lot of people say, "Oh, A plus, it's pointless. So don't waste your time." I think that A plus is actually what we as IT people take for granted, because it's not. You don't come out of the womb knowing the difference between memory and storage. Like you don't know these things,
right? Because they use it interchangeably, right? How much storage you have, how much memory you have left, so
exactly, or resolution, things like that. They're not easy concepts that they're things we take for granted just because we know them. So yeah, I actually don't hate that start. I think if you've already worked help desk and stuff, you don't need it. But like if you don't do any computer stuff and you want to get into it, yeah, it's great. Absolutely, it's great. But one thing I wanted to ask about is the online presence thing. So personally, Alias forced me into an online presence. I was held at gunpoint. I was tied up, possibly waterboarded. No, I'm kidding. So I had nothing. I had no Facebook. I had nothing. No LinkedIn. And they said, you got to get a LinkedIn. And I tried to make a LinkedIn, and LinkedIn kept deleting my account and telling me that I was a fake person, which is funny because it had like 5 sock puppet accounts that were fine. But my real account, they were like, no, you can't do that. So that was pretty wild. And then I had to do a manual review, and they were like, this person doesn't exist. I'm trying to exist, man. So that was pretty entertaining. And then obviously started doing, a lot of news appearances, kind of the first thing, and then podcast and whatnot. And so that's been really weird for me, where I'll run into somebody at a conference and they're like, oh, hey, man, I love the podcast. And they start talking to you. And I'm like, I don't know who this person is. This is weird for me. Which, anybody watching this, please come up and say hi. I'm getting used to it. But it was a little weird for me at first.
Absolutely.
So I imagine probably similar thing for you, or kind of how was it getting the presents for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I didn't have a similar situation as like I had so many sock puppet accounts out there and my real one wasn't getting accepted. I actually did my LinkedIn when I was in college and I never used it. It was just like there, it sat there. I never really used it until about 4 years ago when when I started getting that online presence with my YouTube and getting on podcasts and getting a little more recognition because even prior to that, now we really, really harp on the idea of networking, right?
Mhm.
Not TCP IP, but networking in the physical world or the virtual world in that sense. Um, and that was really weird for me because I like to stay in, not like,
Nice.
I want to say this in the nicest way possible. Like, I just like to stay in my own lane, right? And when I was starting to do this, I was like, okay, now I need to spread out lanes on on 95. Now it's like, oh shit, now I need to start going down multiple lanes and start interacting with people. And when, coming up, back home, when you start interacting with people, you let people in your circle and they do you bad, and it's like, it leaves a sore, a sour taste in your mouth, So everyone was like, "Oh, you have to get used to the spammers or to the trolls," and I was not used to that because I grew up more like in the physical world. You got a problem, you take care of it in the physical world, not behind a computer. So I was like, I bet, like when we start, when it starts happening, we'll deal with it, and it ended up happening. And I don't want to talk about that live because I don't want to, scare
Sure.
anyone, but like I was not really into that world, so I took a little back off and like that's why if you notice a lot of my beginning of my videos, I didn't show my face, right? I was just like, talking on a mic and I didn't really show face until about I don't even know, maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And and
Nice.
I did that on purpose because I wanted to, you know, no, I use this term like with all love and respect. I didn't, I'm not a nerd, right? I didn't grow up nerdy. So,
Sure.
like when people get on these bandwagons of like trolling and stuff like that, to me, I don't know what words we can use on this podcast, but I think
Yeah, you
I
can
think they're
there's
pussies,
zero limits. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
for sure.
so that's the reason why I'm like, yo, like if you have something to say it to my face. And it actually happened. Someone put something really disrespectful on a YouTube video and it had their name and they called me like retarded, you know? And I found them. I came across him at DEF CON and I faced him face to face, and I'm not a small dude,
Yeah.
And I was just telling him, hey, man, like, don't do that because this can land you into some trouble, you know? And, he apologized. He's like, hey, man, like, I was like, all you have to do, man, like, you never know who you're going to run into in the real world. Especially this community is so small and it's
Yep.
like, and so yeah, that was the reason why I didn't like it at first, but then you have the positive side, right? You have people like yourself and just like John Hammond and all these other positive people that are like, welcome arms and they don't make you feel stupid. You know what I mean? Because everyone had like I could have told that guy, all right, let's go configure EIGRP. What's a hello message? They fucking don't know, probably. You know what I mean? They can just hack a
Yep.
web server, but they don't know how to route traffic from one fucking server to another, right? They just do it because
Yeah.
it's working. So that's what really, really, and obviously
Nice.
you're gonna have those trolls in every single industry, but that was the hard thing for me. And so if anyone's out there that's listening that wants to get into the world of content creation, I'm still not used to it. Like you said, hey, what's up? I love your videos. I'm like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, all right, thanks, man. Like, I appreciate it, but they come up to you like they fucking friends for life.
Well,
And it
and
was a little,
people, they've watched you talk for hours, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's like you got to think about it from their perspective, and it's like they kind of in some way do know you a little bit,
yeah,
especially if it's coming through content like this, where it's less topical and a little more personal, like
Hmm.
it's understandable how people come through that because they kind of do get to know you a little bit. But it's
Yep.
weird because it's this one-sided thing that we've never really experienced before, you know?
Yep. Exactly. And that's exactly right. And just because the other side of the camera, from the viewer's perspective, it's like, man, I know him. He's this. He's real. He keeps it a buck. You know what I mean? He keeps it 100. He keeps it this that. And then then they, I guess from that perspective, thinking about it, reversing um the view on that, it's like, oh snap, yeah, that's probably true. It's like, oh, I do know you because I know your fucking whole life story without you even
Right.
realizing that I've been following you for years. So yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly, man. That's what's kind of weird to me, but it's just I get it though. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so one thing I also wanted to ask about is some of like I said earlier, I kept Googling or YouTubing things or whatever, looking for like a tutorial to send somebody, and I kept coming across your stuff. So how do you pick topics? Because you got topics all over the place, like, at least seemingly. Like, I mean, they got a wide range on them.
Yeah, and that's my problem, right? Because I like to talk about a lot of things. For an example, right? Prime example, like this week, I have a NAS, 32 terabytes over there with the private cloud setup, my Synology, and I just bought two new stations with another 32 terabytes, which is 64 terabytes. And I was like, okay, I want to document this journey, right? So what's the first thing you need to do? I wanted to make my DNS quicker at home. Like in this house, I didn't really update any DNS. I just, stuck with my Ubiquity, stuck it in, and whatever Comcast is using 75, 75, 75, 75 for my DNS, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, what I'm going to do is I want to document this journey of installing this, getting it set up. How do I access it through my firewall, port forwarding, the networking aspect, because I missed it a little bit. And that's how I come up with the topics. Like whatever I'm doing in that moment is like, fuck, should I throw on the camera and just like, yo, like talk for 15 minutes about this? Maybe I'll get 10 views because a lot of my viewers are probably more towards cybersecurity, but it doesn't matter. And I think John Hammond made this comment one day. It's like, it's my channel. If I want to make this John Hammond's cooking channel, I want to cook whatever, it's my thing. So, and that's how I come up with the topics. It just like whatever I'm talking about with friends that week, whatever is relevant in my life at that time, I'll just talk about. So I did put like a poll out there, like, oh, like, what are some of the topics that you folks would like to see? If I'm proficient, don't ask me to do some off the wall shit that I don't know how to do. But if it's in my lane, I don't mind talking about it and demonstrating it. So that's how I come up with my topics.
Nice. Gotcha. So kind of a lot of whatever you happen to be doing, just turn on the camera and just go through it. I
Yep.
think that's really good. That's something that one of my good friends, Andrew Lemon, he was telling me that I should do. I'm working on something. I'm scripting out this process because I'm tired of doing it manually. He's like, why don't you write it up? Like, just you're already doing it. Just write up what you're doing while you're doing it. Make a video of it. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, that's
And
that's that's the good workflow.
and one thing I tried, if it's not for me, is like scripting. Like
Nice.
I'm not good at that. Like I sound like a robot. I sound like I read really slow. So it's like if I'm reading off a script, so I'll just like talk about, okay, like a Synology. All right, we're gonna be talking about Synology. What is Synology? It's a NAS. What is a NAS? What's the purpose of a NAS? Like if instead of like, oh, Synology is a NAS. We need to use this NAS for XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Like I'll just rather go off the top of my head about whatever the topic is because it'll flow for me a lot easier than trying to script. And I know people that need a script to stay on par.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I can't work. I don't think I have ever tried to or cannot work off of the script. I'll write down like five or six things.
mhm.
Like these are my topics. There might be one word, and that's it. That's my whole guidelines for a video or anything like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's interesting though. Okay, so just kind of whatever you have been working on, whatever you think is interesting, or if you get a request for some stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, got
Like,
it.
yep. Like when I went to Hack Space Con, I'm like, okay, like I just threw on the camera and say, hey, like I want to, thank everyone like from Red Seer, from Hack RedCon, and all the people that for the sponsors and allowing me to speak there, and just give my appreciation and just show it like, okay, show the love, because I can text, Ken, I can text those guys and like, hey, thank you so much. But I want to show like my appreciation for being there and being a part of that journey, And so that's what I just do. Like I just go through life, whatever's, on the, on my agenda in that specific moment, then I'll just, throw on the camera and just shoot the shit.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like that's something a lot of people could probably benefit from doing, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of cool stuff, and they're just like you and I were, where they're faceless. They have no documentation. It's just all what they're doing is happening, and there's nothing about it. And I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of cool stuff. I mean, sometimes, man, I come across somebody's GitHub on accident, and I look back, and I'm like, holy shit, this person's doing some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And you look for them, and they don't exist anywhere. I mean, it's like it's one of those things. I just had the creator of Zap Attack Proxy.
Yep.
I just had the creator on here, and I couldn't find any kind of like social media that the guy had really done or talked. He's done a little bit, but not much. And I was like, dude, we got to get out, because people don't even really know about the tool. And I'm like, it's incredible, and it's free. Like, people, like, you got to get you out there, man. So it's, yeah. Film your stuff, people. I'm talking to myself. Film your stuff, people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your video making process though? Is it a little more on the technical side? Like, just kind of, do you have like a, OBS fancy recording type stuff going, or?
Yeah. So how I do my recording, and we can back up a little bit. So when I started recording, and if there's anyone interested in this, doing content creation stuff, one thing that was really difficult for me was knowing what to use, when to use it. Meaning, I didn't know what OBS Studio was. I Googled it. People, I'm going to put it out there. A friend of mine used OBS Studio when he would screen record, paid services. For an example, if it's ABC, training, he would use OBS and then throw those on torrents, right? He would screen record, and that's how he would get his stuff. And yep, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. So
Nice.
I asked him, and he didn't really know what I wanted to do. So asking the community, and this is one thing, no matter, I want to put it out there, no matter how big you are or how small you are, like, ask for help, and you'll be surprised who gets back to you. I asked for help. I asked in the community, and just like on LinkedIn, and just people like, I watch their YouTube video. If they have like a contact, an email, no one answered me, right? I'm not going to throw names out there, but I will throw the name that answered me, which I didn't think that would Keith Walker from CBT Nuggets.
Okay.
So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I remember his videos from back in the day.
Yeah, from all this Cisco, and I watched his videos when I was doing the Palo Alto cert. And I just reached out to him and I said, hey, Keith, like, I know you do your CBT Nuggets. I want to start doing videos and I don't know where to start. Literally, like a couple hours later, he reached out and said, oh, like he used, not OBS, he used, started with C. Now I can't think of it. Not Canva. Oh, shit. He used something else. I forgot what the application is, but I can't think about it now. But he's like, just, if you want to get on a call, we can get on a call and I can show you. And I was like, dude, like, I'm like one of your fanboys. You know what I mean? Like, I learned so much shit from you, So, and then you have these channels, that have, I reached out to a few channels that maybe had 100,000, maybe a little more than 100,000 subscribers. And my point of this is, no matter how big you are, how small you are, just respect people. And we all have busy lives, but, it just takes that one, initiation to show love. And I do it like I got reached out and I'm a busy person and I'm no, huge YouTuber or whatever. But, at the end of the day, like if someone has a question, I try to answer it as quickly as possible. So yeah, and that's that's that. So I use OBS. That was just my rant on if you want to get into content creation. But now I use OBS Studio and I use DaVinci Resolve for my editing. I
Nice.
do have like a little stream deck. I do have a DSLR and I have my, my Wave XLR. So now, I spend a few bucks on my setup. Well, when I started, I just had like a Brio 4K webcam and a Blue Yeti mic, and which is over there now. And that was it, and I started out like that. And I used OBS. And I used Shotcut was my editing software, which is open source. I'm not smart enough for Adobe Premiere. It's way too complicated for me. So I just stick with, with what I know, and it works. And yeah, that's what I use.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, we use Premiere, but I have got a guy. One of my engineers knows Premiere real well, and he was just, oh, I can do that. Really? Okay, cool. So yeah, and with their podcast stuff, I think it makes it very easy now. They've got all the the kind of AI integrations with the podcast and auto levels everything and stuff. So that's been pretty cool. But yeah, so you said something that Philip Wiley,
Yep.
he mentioned to me talking about how people kind of grow and grow their network. He said respond to everybody all the time. And I feel like you kind of just touched on that. How important do you feel like that is for people who want to grow their network as well? People who want to, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I've talked to somebody who's talking to me, but
Yeah. Yeah. So that, and yeah, I actually was texting with Phil yesterday. He's an awesome guy. And yeah, he's just such a good person. And I try to answer as many people as I can. I do not answer the ones that ask silly questions and, how to hack this or help me. Okay, help you with what? Who are you? Have some, basic communication skills and establish a somewhat of a relationship before asking for help. That's just my opinion. Because I think you're just a gopher then, you know what I mean? Like a get over, just trying to like ask for help and just trying to fucking scheme, you know?
yeah,
So that's when I was like, with those. But if someone asks like, oh, like I watched your video and I got stuck. And and obviously some of my older videos, if you're using, for an example, using one of the tools that maybe the repository no longer exists or so on and so forth. And that's sometimes what happens. Like people may have not found the repository, but they paused it because one kid was like, I paused it and I typed everything that you had in your, get clone, GitHub, blah, blah, blah. And it said, ask for a username and password. And I'm like, okay, did you try to go to the site and see if the repository exists? Oh, no. And then I did it myself and they removed the tool. So, obviously if it's installed already, then you're golden, but it sucks. But, yeah, so I try to respond to as many people as I can. Um, I think I do a good job, and this is like there's some things going around in the community about like mentoring and all that stuff, and I do have my family, so I was getting to the point where I was taking a lot of time away from that. And I was on my phone constantly and it's like answering questions and getting on Discord and getting on YouTube, getting on Instagram, getting on Twitter, like all these things. And I'm like, fuck, dude, like I only had like at that point 70,000 subs. And I'm like, how would the people that, either they don't give a fuck, you know what I mean? Like the bigger guys, like, I'm not going to worry about the guppy in the sea. Or like maybe they have someone working for them, a marketing fucking person that's dealing with all the socials. But then that's when I said to myself, you know what? Like, if they really want to get together for 30 minutes an hour, let me start doing like a pay me. You know what I mean? Like, let's get us something on the books to have like a little mentor or coaching sessions.
I had written down to ask you about your coaching stuff.
Yeah. So that's what, I don't like asking for money. Money is not something, and I'm putting it out there, I don't need it. Right? I'm not out there needing, like, I'm not eating ramen noodles, thank God. And, but my time with my family is way more valuable than an extra $150 in my pocket. So how can I balance that, right? And that's when I said to myself, you know what, fuck it. You know what I mean? Whoever really wants to talk and really serious, they'll pay the hundred, whatever. I don't even know what the fuck my thing is. $150 for the hour just to help them with their whatever they want to talk about. They want to either be their therapist for the hour. Let's shoot the shit, you know? So, and then I was surprised because I started that in December or January this year. The first week, I, not to toot my horn, but I had like 37 schedules, like people scheduling.
Oh,
Yeah, once I like announced it, I'm like,
nice.
yeah, I was a little, I wasn't expecting all that. So I was like, oh fuck, now I need to have like this hour just to make sure I'm home, not at hockey, not at, like I'm like, oh man, I don't know what I just got myself into. Um, so it helped out financially, and it it helped me reach those people that, if they didn't do that, they wouldn't have reached me.
Right.
And going back to what you were saying, what I was saying is like, there's a lot of people saying, okay, we can do it for free. Don't pay that. Go there. Like, no, it's not a competition. I'm just saying from my time and my is valuable, and how can, I can be compensated for that time. And if it's, through that way, then it is what it is.
Yeah. As far as the consulting side of stuff, like I'm kind of the same way. I'm always down to talk to people. I do this stuff because I love it.
Yeah.
I'm always down to talk to people about it and help answer questions and stuff. But there is a certain line where I'm like, I get paid for this.
Yep.
Like this is at a certain point you are working for free.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I think there is a line people have to respect, but that's just kind of a two-way respect type of thing. When you can talk to people like they're human, I think you got it. But I'm also horrible at responding to stuff like that, so I'm not even able to talk. I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's cool that the coaching thing is working out. So yeah, everybody watching, you got questions for Pat? Gotta hit up his coaching, man. Hit him up.
Yeah, man.
So
Thanks. Yeah. If they, it's not only coaching, like out of those 30, I think it was like 34 people, I would have to look in my HubSpot. So like I had, like 15 or 20 of those people is like getting prepared, which I don't understand. I love TCM. I'm doing the PMPT, like I'm saying.
yep.
Like he teaches you, and he says it really well, how to set up your lab for AD, right?
Yeah.
And there was like 10 people that watched their video or watched his, unless they're just fucking lazy as shit and they wanted me to do it for them. But whatever, it's a paid hour, and I'll fucking hook you up for the hour and remote on your machine and set it up. Not a problem. But like, and I told one guy, whatever, I was like, hey, like, did you watch the videos? Like, it's really, really simple. And he shows you how to do it. He's like, yeah, but I just don't understand. And he says, I don't understand. I'm like, okay, like, what don't you understand? Because he's probably more clear than me. You know what I mean? He speaks better English than me. And I was like, all right, where are you stuck at? He goes, I didn't start yet. And I'm like,
Oh,
I'm like, all right, I got what you're doing here. And then we were already like 15, 20 minutes into our conversation. And when he said that, I'm like, all right, we have 40 minutes. How fast is your internet? Can you download these ISOs? Can you download this? What hypervisor are you using? Like, he didn't know. I'm like, you watched half of the fucking course, got into the AD section. What have you been doing? Right. And so anyone that's out there, man, like, make sure if you're studying for whatever, OSCP or whatever you're doing, make sure you listen to the instructor and follow and try it before you start reaching out for help. Because if you're going to be in this community or in this career, I don't mind helping, but and I'm sure whoever you work for, if you're a pen tester or whatever you are, I'm sure you have a team of beautiful people, but it's going to be really hard for you to succeed if you're not thinking outside the box and having that mindset.
Yeah, this isn't the industry for you, honestly. If you're not a self-starter and somebody who can go figure things out, it's not a good industry for you. I mean, security in particular is, especially offensive security. With blue team stuff, you can be a little more by the book, get your stigs and check every box off and be really anal and thorough, buy a book. But if you're doing offensive stuff, man, it's that's why I love it, is because it's creativity. It's almost just as much of an art as it is, a science. It's
Hmm.
like EDR bypasses is basically throwing weird shit out until it works.
Yeah,
I mean, how weird can you think? The weirder you can, the more likely it is to work. I mean,
exactly.
yeah, it's so PNTP. What do you think of that course? I've been a fan of it as far as for like whenever we kind of like to bring people from like a SOC analyst to a pen tester type of role, and I've been going for PNTP for like a entry level type of thing.
Yeah. So I will take a step back. So I did the PJPT because I haven't taken an exam in 4 years, 5 years. In 2018, that's when I was going through the OSCP training. And so I've been out of the buckle down, let's study, right? For a minute. So when I was like, okay, when I talked to Joe, the TCM folks, I was like, hey man, like I'd like to do the PMPT, but I really like to do like the TJPT just to get back into and how you guys present your exams, right? So, and obviously, for a blessing that, they hooked me up with a voucher, and I really appreciate that from them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this PJPT, see how it is, get my feet back in it. And, it was an awesome, like how they did their exam was super, super realistic. Like you're doing an internal assessment, right?
Mhm.
For the PJPT. So, and he says
I,
he really, really enjoyed, it wasn't no CTF. It wasn't no like thing like you're really compromising that network and you have to know what tools to use, how to do it. And so I really enjoyed that. So for the PMPT, I hope it's like the same kind of approach and just from the external side. So maybe they have some kind of external, see, this is in my mind, I don't understand, right? Because if it's an exam, how is it like, if it's an external, it's probably on the internet somewhere. You know what I mean? It's probably somewhere out there. Um, or what I'm thinking is like when they had like the Try Hack Me Red Team capstone thing. So they had like that little bank and it has like a public web server, but it's like, sort of like that. I don't know. I haven't taken it yet, but from all the coursework that I've done, and he says
how
how clear it is. That's why with that kid that asked me, I'm like, dude, like it's pretty clear. Um,
Mhm.
I really enjoy their training and I enjoy what they're doing for the community. Like for someone that wants to get into the industry, you know, having that entry level and then, that mid level for the PMPT. Because, we could talk about certs and like the OSCP was very CTF-y. I think like,
especially back in the day.
yeah,
Especially how many buffer overflows do you need? You know how many times I've done a buffer overflow in my years of pen testing?
and he says,
Maybe once.
yeah,
Like it's not even a thing. I
yeah,
don't know why they were obsessed with buffer overflows, man. But I guess they're better. They do more AD stuff now. So.
yeah. So now I think it's 3 AD machines and like 2 like SQL things or whatever, however they have their stuff structured now.
Yeah.
But still like, so, and that's what like, I don't know how the exam is now, but probably still, it probably has, because you still have to capture flags, right? You still have to get into an environment, and I guess that's considered their loot, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
get the loot. And but I think like from OffSec, if you're doing like maybe OSEP, I haven't got that far. But when you're talking about, I am saying that because you're saying AV and EDR invasion, um, I think that would, prep you up for that. If correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the way to go if someone wants to learn those advanced techniques. And he
We
says,
don't do much with the offensive security certs, honestly. Nothing against them in particular. I've liked some of the TCM security. There's RTO, Red Team Operator. I'm trying to
yeah,
remember who does that one. That's a fantastic cert if you want some of the more advanced obfuscation type of stuff. But also, I'm not a person that lives and dies by certs, especially in offensive security.
mhm,
Things move so fast, certs can't really keep up.
yeah,
And don't even get me started on formal education as far as like university.
yeah,
Yeah, they're so far behind, it's almost not worth doing. And there are certain courses that are, yeah, they stand out. But for the most part, the majority of these schools are teaching people things that are 5 years old at least.
Yep.
I mean, and
That's the newer
I'm not
stuff.
doing this right. I'm pen testing different than I was 6 months ago. I mean,
Yep.
it's constantly changing. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's one of those things. Um, yeah, I value just what people say and experience a little more than I do certs. Certs are cool, especially if you don't have a lot of opportunities to get it otherwise. But I
Hmm.
mean, I think building out a lab I use the shit out of Snap Labs.
Yep.
Just building out a lab and attacking that is just as valuable, or can be just as valuable as any cert.
Uh-huh.
Um, you do a lot. You've done some video about some home lab stuff, right?
Yep.
For
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
What's your take on the home lab versus buy insert type of thing, or do both?
Yeah. So I always say for like if you're trying to learn more about the industry, my thing is building the lab. Yeah, you can jump on TryHackMe, Hack the Box, Hub, all these other platforms. Uh, but I think it takes away from an experience that you would get going back to, because I come from a networking system engineering background, like connecting those dots of what is NAT, what is a host only adapter, what is, when you're routing through different things. So like how I set up, like if I'm doing like my mentor thing when I'm setting up a home lab, my home lab consists of 4, maybe 5, depending on how many resources you have on your machine, is a Kali Linux box, OpenSense or pfSense so we can route traffic, and then a Active Directory, and then like a Windows box. And then you can also throw in a Linux box with LAMP so you can have a web server and like maybe some, a mail server or something like that so you can, pretend to have an external facing uh, thing so you can compromise that and pivot your way in, use port forwarding and, lateral movement. But that's pretty much how I set up that environment. Uh, and not only does it give you the experience of utilizing all the techniques and stuff that you want to learn and however you want to learn it, but you're building it yourself. So if it does break, you're the one that's troubleshooting it and making it work. So I think it closes some gaps. And this just popped in my head with that because I remember about 7 years ago now when I was studying for CCNP, my friend passed it before me. This was when it was CCNP route switch. Now it's enterprise.
So,
So, and he never took his network plus. And obviously I took my network plus, and he was in a MDF in a server closet or whatever you want to call it. And he says he was like, oh, I don't, because he never physically been in something and he doesn't even know what 586B is. So that's the wiring for, and when he was looking at a patch panel, I guess the cleaning folks, I guess because it was a new install and they didn't really strap them in, they were sweeping or something. And then one of the cables came out of the patch panel. So the patch panel then from that port goes into the switch. Obviously, it's not communicating. So it was a physical issue. And he says he didn't understand what's the difference between 586A and 586B, white, orange, white, green, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. And he was just like, and he says, I don't know how to, patch it back in, but you have a CCNP, right? So like if you look at someone, so going back to the security side of things, if you're just like pen testing, if you're doing even defensive stuff and you're just having that experience of configuring, architect or whatever, engineering it, it gives you that leverage, like you might be able to hack AD. And he says, what is a SAM database? What is RODC is? What is a forest? You know what I mean? Just because you can hack it.
yeah,
So,
I see that all the time. Where we saw like LSAS coming up in some sort of an EDR alert for like new SOC analysts, and they're freaking out. Oh my God, it's LSAS. I'm like, why are you concerned about this? Like, they're not dumping LSAS. There's not Mimikatz. Like, LSAS is the logon process. Like, it's not a bad like, but they just know it from taking classes and seeing, oh, dump LSAS. They know
yeah,
dump LSAS, so they don't realize that LSAS is like, no, it's a process you use every single day, every time you log on. It's just because
exactly.
you see it doing something. It should be doing something. or I get people on pen tests for their first time, either interns or junior pen testers just coming on. And the hardest things that they're doing is not the tools in the pen test or things like that. It's getting their virtual machine to work. Should it be on NAT? Should it be on bridged? It's, the basic CLI type of stuff when I'm like, if people would learn Linux well enough to know awk and grep and things like that, and oh, you should tee it out to a file, don't just cat it and copy and paste it, like things like, or it's just learn a little bit of command line foo, learn some networking. It'll take you a long way in what you know with the offensive stuff, because that's really what I see people losing hours on in the very beginning stages of their career.
No, and that's facts. And that's why I think closing that gap, with that, because you're in your own environment, you had to set up. And I always say, yes, if you're experienced, yeah, go download the VMDK or the VDI from, OffSec. But if you never did it before, download the ISO, install it. Because I guarantee the first time you're going to mess up, because I did. And sometimes I still do if I'm eager beaver, right? When it has the bootloader, right? It says yes or no. And you're like, oh, yeah. And then it says, oh, it's trying to go to /dev or something. I don't forget what it is, because I don't do it all the time. Yeah, exactly.
We've all done it.
And it's like, you sure you want to write it? And like people are like, no, I don't want to. I'm like, dude, you're just reinstalling, you're installing on a blank virtual disk. Of course you want to write it, So having that experience going through that is definitely beneficial. And he says,
couldn't agree more. We're on the same page there. Yeah, I want to beat that to death. Yeah, I think build a home lab, learn the basics. We came up from a bit of a different time, though. Whenever we came up, you couldn't just go choose security. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't an option. There wasn't even always security people. It was usually the network dude who did some security stuff.
Yep.
And so we learned everything up to and then security largely. I mean, I kind of came up from a little bit mischievous, a little bit of hacker, phone freak friends type of stuff like that. But yeah, even then it was, still learn Unix was their advice. Learn Unix, learn C. That was the advice everybody would tell me. And it was, I still never learned C, still can't do C to save my life. But
neither can I.
Man, I saw a comment on one of your videos. I want one more thing to hit on real quick. You said something about CrackMap exec being gone, and that tool is or being deprecated. I guess not gone, it's still there, but that tool is my bread and butter, and I can't even explain to you how sad I am that CrackMap is no longer being updated. Byte Bleeder, please watch this and fix it. Not anybody could pick it up. It's open source, but yeah, that's one of those things. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's funny because in the PJPT, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try to stay away from CrackMap exec. I'm gonna use NetExec. NetExec, please, Pat. And I even had it because I had a timer on see how long it takes me to compromise the domain, and some of the tools that I wanted to utilize, and he says it still went to, CME, and I'm like, fuck, man, this is, and when I didn't even realize I was just doing it because I just wanted to get through the exam. And then when I was, taking my screenshots and putting it in my my notepads for the report, and I'm like, shit, I only use NetExec twice, but I wanted to use it more just to show okay, I'm trying to stay up to date, stay up to. But to answer your question, I like CrackMap exec. It is my bread and butter as well. It's just it's just ingrained in my mind, Going to something else is sort of I don't know if you were still working in networking back then, and he says to the traditional iOS from Cisco to Nexus switches when we had to install an image on our switch, and now it's the whole Nexus OS. So it's you can't just do show run config or doing all these things. You have to get into a module in order for you to actually run these commands. So it's same thing with the ASA, going from the ASA firewalls to the FTDs to Firepower Threat Defense and Firepower Threat modules. Yeah, it's you just have to stay up to date, and like you're saying, things change so quickly, and adapting is super critical. And
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah, it's always a shame if you see a good tool dying. It's happened many times, honestly, throughout my career at this point. I don't want to see crap Mac go. It's still perfectly usable, to be honest. I
Mhm.
still use it, but yeah, just knowing it's not getting any more updates, and well, honestly, I guess there's a lot of things that are changing, especially with the rollout of Server 2025. If you've seen those release notes, so
Mhm.
there's a lot going to be changing here in the next few years, and it's going to be the next iteration of stuff. And I don't know what pen testing is going to look like in 5 years. I'm excited, but I don't know what it's going to look like. So
Mhm.
it's kind of what's cool about it, I think. But yeah.
And he says,
Well, man, do you have anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to plug? Let people know where to find you.
"Yeah, man. First of all, I just want to say thank you. Hey, I want to say thanks for having me on and just shooting the
Thank
smack
you.
for the hour. And if anyone has any questions for me, everything is pretty much at Infosec Pat. So it's like you can check me out on Instagram, Facebook, not really Facebook, but like LinkedIn. You can connect with me, Patrick Gorman on LinkedIn. Check out my channel, and you can reach out to me any way that you can. And looking forward to hearing from you. And he says,
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on, man. I think it's awesome. I love hearing your story and hearing you talk about it. Hopefully, kind of maybe inspire some other people who are sitting out there faceless and just get out there and do some stuff. It'll take you to some good places. So I
"Yep,
encourage everybody to go do it. I mean, be mindful of your security and privacy, of course.
mhm,
But yeah, I encourage everybody to get out there. So all right, man.
awesome,
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I appreciate it. Maybe we can have you back on again, anytime you're doing a cool project or something, we'd love to have you back on. So yeah.
awesome."
Well, thanks everybody for checking out this week's episode, and we'll catch you next time.